The night had an unnatural chill, even for mid-January. The restaurant's warm glow seemed inviting, a beacon against the oppressive darkness outside. I had been looking forward to this for weeks, a date with someone who seemed perfect. We'd met online, her profile a mix of wit and charm, the kind of person who seemed to understand me in ways no one else did. The restaurant was almost empty when I arrived, its dim lighting casting strange shadows on the polished wood floors. She wasn't there yet. I took a seat by the window, the glass frosted from the cold outside. I watched as flakes of snow swirled under a street lamp, twisting and spinning as if caught in an unseen dance. The feeling of being watched prickled the back of my neck, but the street was empty. Minutes passed, then an hour. I texted her, but there was no reply. The waiter refilled my water glass with a polite but pitying look. I laughed it off, pretending not to notice, but the creeping unease grew. I decided to leave, chalking it up to a bad coincidence. But as I reached for my coat, my phone buzzed. A single text lit up the screen. "Come outside." Relief and annoyance mixed as I stepped out into the cold. The street was deserted, the restaurant now dark behind me. Across the road, a figure stood beneath the street lamp. She was wearing a long red coat, her face obscured by shadows. My breath puffed in the cold air as I called out, but no sound came. My throat felt tight, like something was holding the words back. The figure didn't move. I stepped closer, the snow crunching beneath my feet unnervingly loud in the stillness. Halfway across the street, she turned and walked away, her footsteps leaving no trace in the freshly fallen snow. My stomach twisted, but my feet followed her as if compelled by some unseen force. The streetlights flickered, casting everything in a sickly orange glow. She led me into an alley I hadn't noticed before. The walls were lined with graffiti, the colors faded and smeared as though the images were trying to escape their confines. My pulse quickened. Something was wrong, but I couldn't stop. The alley ended in a door, its paint peeling and the brass handle tarnished with age. She stood in front of it, her back to me. The faintest whisper escaped her lips. Though the wind should have carried it away, I heard it as clear as my own heartbeat. The door creaked open on its own, revealing darkness so deep it seemed to swallow the dim light of the alley. She stepped inside and I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But then her head turned slightly, just enough for me to glimpse the edge of her face. Her lips didn't move, but I heard her voice in my head. "Come." The door slammed shut behind me as I entered. The air was heavy and damp, carrying the metallic scent of rust or blood. The room was empty, save for a single table in the center lit by a bare bulb that swung gently, though there was no breeze. On the table lay a box. It was small, black, and unassuming. I stepped closer, each footfall muffled as though the ground was absorbing the sound. The box had no seams or lock, just a faint engraving of an eye on its surface. My reflection stared back at me from the polished wood. As I reached out, a voice whispered from the shadows, low and guttural. "Open it." My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a small, heart-shaped locket. The paper felt warm, almost alive as I unfolded it. The words scrawled across it were in a language I didn't recognize, but I understood them perfectly. "You've been chosen." The bulb above me burst, plunging the room into darkness. My breath came in ragged gasps as I fumbled for my phone, its screen casting a pale blue glow. But the room was no longer empty. Shapes moved in the shadows, their forms flickering between human and something else, something angular and wrong. Their eyes glowed faintly and they watched me in unison, heads tilting unnaturally as if they were curious. I stumbled back, the box and its contents falling from my hands. The locket hit the ground and the shadows recoiled momentarily, their forms shimmering like smoke in the wind. But then they surged forward, their movements a nightmarish blur. I turned and ran, the darkness swallowing me whole. The hallway I found myself in wasn't part of the building I'd entered. The walls pulsed, veins of black ichor spreading across their surface like roots. My own reflection stared back at me from countless mirrored shards embedded in the walls, each one showing me in varying states of decay. The whispers returned, louder now, overlapping into a deafening roar. My reflection grinned, its teeth sharp and jagged. I screamed, but the sound died in my throat. Behind me, the shapes emerged again, faster this time. One of them reached for me, its fingers too long and ending in claws that dripped with a dark, viscous liquid. I ran blindly, my chest burning, until I burst through another door and into the street. The snow fell heavier now, coating everything in a thick, suffocating layer. But something was wrong. The buildings around me were distorted, their windows glowing with an unnatural red light. The air tasted metallic, and the snow beneath my feet wasn't snow anymore. It was ash. My phone buzzed again, and I pulled it out with shaking hands. The screen showed a single notification. "We are waiting." A photo followed, showing me standing in the very spot where I now stood, the shadows closing in around me. I looked up, and she was there again, the woman in the red coat. Her face was clearer now, but I wished it wasn't. Her features were twisted, her eyes hollow, and her smile stretched too wide. She raised a hand, beckoning me forward. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was her face splitting apart, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Her voice echoed in my mind one final time. "The date never ends." When I woke, I was back in my apartment, the red coat draped over the chair in the corner. On the table lay the locket, its surface now engraved with my name. My phone buzzed and a new message appeared. "Your turn." I realized then that I wasn't free. I was part of it now, an endless loop of fear and despair. And somewhere out there, someone else was waiting for their perfect date.